Will Hoffman never imagined he'd end up part of the 46% of people that don't get their happily ever after. But as divorce papers are delivered to his office, he's forced to face reality. Despite that, Tuesdays and Fridays are his favorite days, because he gets out of work early to pick up his daughter, Maya, from school. He puts on his headphones, playing Sly and the Family Stone's Everyday People as he walks through New York. He finds his daughter's school in pandemonium. The school had a sex education class that has both the students and parents in an uproar, considering the kids are too young for such a subject. Will's daughter is calm compared to the other kids, but still demands they have a talk. Maya relays what she's learned in class, which is that in order for reproduction to happen, a man must thrust his into a woman. Bringing up that Sammy Boygan's sister claims Sammy was an accident. Considering what she's learned, Maya can't fathom how a child can be an accident. How does a man mistakenly end up inside a woman's? Will's unnerved at Maya's curiosity, begging her to stop. But she won't rest until Will explains how a child can be an accident. Sighing, he explains the accident wasn't Sammy's parents having sex, but that Sammy's mom got pregnant. It's something they hadn't planned for. Maya doesn't understand why a couple would have sex if they didn't want a baby, and unwilling to explain that, Will calls it rehearsing. Maya questions if she was an accident, but Will quickly assures her she wasn't. Maya asks Will to tell her the story of how he and her mom met, the real, uncensored story. Will claims he'll tell her when she's old enough, but she wants to know now. Believing she's mature enough, she knows love isn't a fairy tale. Now that her parents are getting divorced, and she understands how sex works, she's voraciously curious about how she was born. She prods Will, wondering if he had girlfriends before her mom, and he admits he had 2 serious girlfriends, with a smattering of affairs here and there. She continues prodding all the way till bedtime. He keeps deferring, claiming it's complicated, but Maya's fed up with him constantly using that excuse to keep truths away from her. She feels as though once he tells the story, he'll realize it's not that complicated, and that he truly loves her mother. He tries to get her to sleep, but she whines until he eventually gives up. He decides he'll tell her the story, but won't say who her mom is, changing the names and some of the facts. Maya's excited for the challenge of guessing who her mom is. Will's story begins in 1992 in Madison, where he lived at the time. He's in love with his college sweetheart, Emily, and has an embarrassing dream of becoming president one day. It's an ambitious cause that makes him decide to go to New York to work on the Clinton campaign. Emily's concerned New York will change him. She doesn't understand why he can't work with the team in Madison. Will claims he's not needed here. It's the New York team that needs support. It's only going to be a 2-month trip, and Will believes whatever changes may come, the couple can face them together. His roommate Charlie teases that it's dangerous to leave Emily alone here with him. He's always had a thing for her, but Will's mind is made up. Before leaving, Emily gives Will a package to deliver to Summer, an old friend from college who lives in New York. Emily jokes all the boys in college wanted to sleep with Summer, and Will might, too. Will thinks maybe she should deliver it in person, but she insists he deliver it. With a kiss and an I love you, she sends Will off. Maya thinks Emily sounds like a good mother, but she isn't sure she's her mother, theorizing it might be Summer, seeing as how the first girlfriend in the story usually gets dumped. Will lands in New York, youthfully optimistic about his new position, supporting a cause he wholeheartedly believes in. He meets Gareth Henderson, his new boss, who snaps him back to reality, handing him an order for coffee and bagels to collect. Will stuck doing menial, internship-level tasks like restocking on toilet paper, a feat that makes him known as the toilet paper guy. He goes to make copies for Arthur one day, and is recognized by the girl at the machine, whom he introduces as April, thanks to his nickname. He casually asks what made her a Clinton supporter, and she reveals she's not. She's just doing this job for the money. April doesn't identify with any political alignment, arguing she doesn't have to pick a side or have an opinion on everything. Will challenges her with topics like civil rights, women's rights, claiming she's apathetic, but April doesn't see it that way. She's aware politicians don't care about anything past their own ambitions, and Clinton won't be the revolutionary leader Will's hoping for. As if fate were confirming her words, the office falls into silence as the news interviews a woman who's come out claiming to be Bill Clinton's lover. Will and his co-workers groan at the news on the bar TV, debating when it'll blow over and how it'll affect the campaign. Kelly argues everyone has their weaknesses, and the group go around the table jokingly discussing their types. They toast to Clinton's weaknesses before blowing off steam for the rest of the night. Will drunk calls Emily, missing her immensely. He begs her to come to New York, even for a weekend. Emily's hesitant. She can already hear how Will's changed and how he expresses himself. She diverts by asking if he's found Summer, and he admits he left a message but hasn't gotten any response. Will notes Emily sounds down, and she confides she's lonely without him. Russell, his roommate, returns home ecstatic about his successful night, confessing he might be in love with Kelly. Seeing Will stare at the package, Russell urges him to satisfy his curiosity by opening it. Will gives into peer pressure, opening the package to find a diary. He's hesitant to read it at first, but quickly succumbs. He finds written inside Summer's spicy recollection of her college years, how the girls would tease the boys in the dorm across from them with their half-naked bodies, pretending the boys couldn't see. She mentions Emily, and Will stops himself, but Russell snatches the book out of his hands, reading on to find a passage describing a love affair between Emily and Summer. It only dawns on Russell moments after Will snatches the book away that the Emily mentioned is Will's girlfriend. Despite how upset he'd seemed, and denying Russell the privilege, Will reads the rest of the diary that night. Will visits Summer's apartment, greeted by a gentleman named Hampton, whom he assumes is her father. Hampton aggressively offers him a drink, interrogating him with a slew of questions about who he is and what he does. Will, feeling intimidated and not wanting to be disrespectful, acquiesces to Hampton's erratic demands. The next thing Will knows, he's being woken up by a woman and handed aspirin. It's Summer, claiming Will drank her boyfriend under the table. Summer gets a kick out of finding out what he and Hampton talked about. The topic was how to be a real man, apparently. Will hands her the diary, and she experiences a happy nostalgia as she thumbs through the pages. Noticing unfamiliar creases, Summer asks if Will's read it, and he confesses he did, quickly trying to cover his shame by complimenting her writing skills. She's offended at first, but Will's humor and genuine remorse softens her, and she wonders why Emily sent him to deliver this. She tries to wake Hampton, and Will realizes the man is Hampton Roth, a famous writer. Something about Hampton and Summer's relationship clicks with that knowledge. After all, she is beautiful and exceedingly brilliant. It makes sense she'd be attracted to someone like him. She flirts with Will, subversively challenging him to be more of a real man than Hampton, and he decides to retreat. For his safety, Summer walks him to the elevator and suddenly kisses him. She whispers an apology afterwards, claiming she was just curious. As she bids Will goodbye, she invites him to call her up so they can go to dinner sometime. He's left dazed and confused. While relating the story to Russell, he asks Will if he's really gonna call. Will wants to stick to the plan. He has Emily, and they have a future together. A week before the primary, he graduates from toilet paper and coffee to bumper stickers and signs. Then one day, Gareth assigns him a new job. He hands Will a list of Madison graduates who earn $200,000+ a year, and tasks Will to sell them tables for an upcoming fundraiser, seeing as he's a former student too. He's given a desk and asked to sell 5 tables, much to his excitement. He's overjoyed to have a purpose that suits his abilities, and works diligently. It's difficult at first, and after a while the constant rejections begin draining him. But on one particular call, he looks over to April, who's got a map behind her, and he's struck with a brilliant, genuine pitch about Clinton standing for hope. It sounds cheesy, but it's exactly what's needed to finish the sale. With that spark, Will's motivation builds, and he gets sharper and sharper on sales till eventually selling an entire table for $50,000, celebrated by a boisterous round of applause from his co-workers. Will visits his usual corner store to buy a pack of cigarettes and bumps into April, who's restocking her smokes too. He's aghast when he sees how much her brand costs, and April explains hers are better quality than his, less chemicals. Will argues she's paying more for pretty packaging and a reassuring idea about her lifestyle, but April reveals his brand uses saltpeter, which makes cigarettes burn faster, and thus makes him smoke more. Their debate leads them into a $20 bet where they try to prove whose brand is better, by smoking the same amount at the same time and seeing who finishes first. They light up, and April reveals it's her birthday. When Will questions why she's not out celebrating, April reveals her current boyfriend cares more about becoming the next Kurt Cobain than her birthday, and opted to go to a gig last minute, despite the fact they'd had dinner plans. Will doesn't know who Kurt Cobain is, and he's lost the bet. He pulls out his wallet to hand April her winnings, but she insists the satisfaction of her being right is enough. April claims if he wants to help, he can take her to a party instead. At the event, April gets the story about Emily from Will. She challenges that if he's so happy with her, what's stopping him from marrying her? Will flashes her an engagement ring, revealing he intends on doing it tomorrow when Emily arrives in New York. He's booked a reservation at a fancy restaurant for the occasion. April commends his confidence, wondering what he plans to say, and volunteers herself for practice. She pretends to be Emily, waiting for her heart-stopping proposal, but is critical of him not getting on one knee, and flat-out rejects him when he stutters during the proposal. Will groans and April goes on a rant, in character, about Will's lack of enthusiasm at the idea of their marriage, and his lack of persuasion for Emily to abandon her freedom as a woman for a consumer capitalist ideal. Will's competitive nature is spurred on by April's arguments, as usual, giving him a burst of motivation to deliver a heartfelt and utterly charming proposal. April's breathless by the end, and when he pops the question again, this time she answers with a definitely, maybe. Will walks April home. At her apartment, he notices her collection of Jane Eyre books. April reveals when she was 13, she'd wanted a pair of gold earrings for her birthday, but instead her father got her a hardcover copy of Jane Eyre that he wrote a beautiful inscription in. She hadn't cared for the gift at the time, which she regrets, because he passed away 3 weeks later in a car accident. When she went to college, her mom sold their house and her copy got lost, so now, every time she sees one in a used bookstore, she purchases it, hoping to find hers. She shows him the ones she found that have inscriptions, and he hears Nirvana for the first time, playing in the background. They spend their night bonding with witty banter. He shares his dream of becoming president with her, and she confides she wants to travel the world one day. She's been saving for it, but feels as though her boyfriend is a weight. Will advises her to dump him, she's too good for him. April appreciates how natural and open their communication is, and something in the moment leads the couple to kiss passionately. They both freeze mid-kiss. Will grabs his things, immediately exiting as he ponders what he's just done. Will returns to his hotel in the morning to find Emily already in the lobby. She's arrived early. He runs up the stairs, trying desperately to make it to his room before her, as there's no way he can explain spending a night out that doesn't add up to cheating. He doesn't make it in time, but fortunately Russell covers for him, claiming Will was sent out to Albany on an assignment. The couple greet each other with a kiss. Emily notes Will's tongue tastes different. New York truly has changed him. An awkward tension runs through their reunion, and Emily suggests they take a walk to get some air. Will tells Emily the story of how his father proposed to her mother. His father was on his way to meet his mother to propose when he ran into his ex, Caroline Hopper, and as they spoke, old feelings began resurfacing between the two. His father had thought he could run away with Caroline and be happy when he saw Will's mother coming round the corner behind her, and he had an epiphany about his feelings for her. Emily questions whether she's Will's mother in this story or Caroline. But when Will pulls out the ring, she quickly realizes she's the mom. As Will delivers his final few lines of his proposal, Emily begs him to stop, confessing she slept with Charlie. Will doesn't understand why she would cheat. He thought they'd had a plan, but Emily feels as though it was never her plan, just Will's. She didn't know how to tell him she hadn't wanted the same things. Will screams in frustration after she apologizes, as if that makes things better. Emily makes the excuse she's letting him go for his own good. She doesn't want to stand in the way of his ambitions, and eventually be resented by him for it. With that, Emily dumps Will. Shortly after, Clinton wins the election, a victory welcomed by Will's co-workers. But while everyone in the office celebrates, April notices Will looks depressed. She tries to cheer him up with a joke, congratulating him on being offered a permanent position in the campaign. Will takes the opportunity to apologize for the other night, and April accepts, admitting she doesn't think they'd work out anyway. They'd be like cats and dogs. The two toast, agreeing to stay friends. Maya scratches Emily off the list as her mom, disappointed with how their story ended. She asks if there were women besides Emily, April, and Summer, but Will was too busy at the time. He and Russell opened their own consultancy firm, and he'd started dating again, but nothing serious. April dumped her boyfriend and went traveling as she'd planned to, inspired by something Will said to her on her birthday. The two exchanged letters constantly and, despite the distance, became best friends. In 1994, Russell and Will's old boss Arthur Robrito runs for governor, and gives them a big break working on his campaign. He also receives an invitation to Hampton's signing for his newly released book. Will finally feels as though he's finding his feet in New York, truly becoming part of the city. Summer notices Will at the signing and the two whisper a greeting, catching up with each other. Will breaks it to Summer that Emily's starring in someone else's diary, while Summer reveals the professor dumped her for a sophomore, saying it was for her own good. Will rolls his eyes, noting that excuse seems to be trending. He runs into Hampton, who regales him with lectures after finding out he works for Robrito, insisting the man is a putz, only obsessed with power and money. Will's read every one of Hampton's books, noting obsession over power, and money is his favorite topic. Summer claims it's because he has neither. Hampton comes up with the idea of Will getting Summer, who now works at the New York Magazine writing puff pieces, to write an article about Robrito. This way, Summer gets a break, and Will gets the word out on his candidate. The article impresses Will and his team. He commends Summer on her job well done over dinner, the two flirting. As they walk home, Summer reveals when she was younger, she'd wanted to be a Broadway actress, which comes as a surprise to Will. He's always perceived actresses as needy and emotional, two things Summer is not. He asks if she has a favorite song, demanding she perform it for him on the street. Theatrically, she performs a mildly off-key rendition of I've Got a Crush on You. The two start seeing each other, going shopping, working, and sleeping together. Will gift Summer a collection of CDs from different artists that all have varying renditions of I've Got a Crush on You. They can't keep their hands off each other, their love filled with youthful exuberance and playfulness. Summer wakes one morning, admiring Will more than usual. She begs him to stay in bed with her, doing nothing all day, something her workaholic nature never allowed her to do before. He agrees, but just as they start relaxing, the phone rings. Summer goes to answer on instinct and quickly stops herself. It's supposed to be a no-work day, but when the answering machine picks up and she hears the woman on the other end announce she's calling from the emergency room, Summer grabs the phone. Hampton's in the hospital for a ruptured aorta. While Will handles a work call, Summer chats with Hampton, who's bitter about her dating Will. He hopes she doesn't love him, admitting when he set them up, he'd expected her to chew him up and spit him out. He admonishes Summer for the Robrito article, disappointed that instead of looking for dirt, as is her journalistic duty, she wrote something that benefited Will. By Hampton's standards, the article wasn't in line with her integrity. On the day of Robrito's fundraiser, which the president is supposed to attend, Gareth bursts in with a problem. None of the menus or programs have union seals printed on them, so hotel staff won't let anyone into the building. Kelly arrives saying she can't find Robert Klein, and Ann appears reporting there's a hailstorm in Chicago, where the president's arriving from. It seems everything's falling apart all at once. The team starts arguing, tension's high, and Will takes control of the situation, delegating orders and quickly taking the lead. Just as he gets Gareth to make copies of the rectified menus and all seems calm, he receives an ominous call. A mysterious female voice whispers she knows all about Will and Robrito's dirty little secret, and can expose them at any time. Will looks around, trying to keep his composure as he searches for the source of the threat. Lo and behold, he spots it, April. His face breaks into a relieved smile. They walk together as they catch up. She's been traveling for the summer, and he's surprised she's back so soon. She relates a story to him about how she was in Crete, having a romance novel-worthy affair with the dark, brooding and sexy Paco. But one night, after he'd kissed her, she burst into tears, explaining she saw the entirety of their relationship in a flash. She follows him into a jewelry store, still caught up in telling the story. She's finally gotten to the part where she builds up the courage to walk away from Paco, how life-changing it was for her, and who she'd realized she wanted to be with. Just then, Will collects an engagement ring from the jeweler, and April's story crumbles to dust. April storms out, furious and a bit humiliated. Will doesn't understand why she's upset, though she figures it's obvious. They'd been writing each other for months, and Will never mention being in love with anyone. Not to mention, it's clear from her story that she was leading up to confessing feelings for Will, but this goes entirely unnoticed by him, even as he admits he was afraid to tell her about Summer in his letters. April wonders why he'd ever be afraid of that, and Will honestly isn't sure. April hugs him, holding her tears back as she agrees to support his decision. Maya feels terribly for April, branding her the character in the story who's always been the friend, eventually realizes she wants to be the girlfriend, but is too late when she comes back. Even Will's 9-year-old daughter can tell from the narrative that April came back for him. Will contemplates that suggestion. As the pre-event chaos calms, and Gareth lets Will know everything's back on track, he's visited by Summer with some news. The magazine wants her to do a follow-up article on Robrito, and she shows a copy to Will to read over. In the piece, she reveals Robrito once got a friend out on early parole, and Will's aghast. Robrito's supposed to be the tough-on-crime Democrat. Will's acutely aware they won't survive this. Summer tries to make the excuse they're ahead of the polls, trying to convince him it'll blow over, and the article won't damage Robrito's campaign. Will isn't referring to the election, but their relationship. The speechwriter's girlfriend writing an incriminating article is more than enough for him to lose his job. He begs Summer not to publish it, to let another eager journalist destroy Robrito. But when she answers with only silence, he realizes it's already done. Summer has chosen her career over him. Wasting no time, Will goes down to Robrito to do his own job. Maya's extremely upset and disappointed in who Summer turned out to be. She wonders what happened after the article was published. Robrito lost the election, while Will lost his job and his friendship with Russell, who blamed him for how things ended. 3 years later, as the Clinton-Lewinsky affair dominates TV news, Will suddenly gets a call from April, who he hasn't spoken to since '94, and wants to ensure he's watching. They update each other on the relevant topics: life, work, dating. They go out for dinner where Will admits he doesn't want flings anymore. He's ready to settle down and find the one. April argues, you don't find the one, they find you. She theorizes it's never who but when, that when people reach to the point in their lives where they want to settle, they just do it with whoever happens to be around at the time. Will wonders why she isn't out dating if that's the case, and April confides she is. She's dating a guy named Kevin. Will mopes around the house, the Clinton affair deeply frustrating him. He partly blames himself for giving Clinton that position. Checking his voicemails, April leaves a message trying to contact him about his birthday, and he skips over a message from Emily, who's in New York, and asks him out for breakfast, the last thing he wants to hear. April pounds on Will's door, waking him up for his birthday party. As he fumbles to get dressed, she looks around the apartment, its disarray reflective of Will's mind at the time. They arrive at the party, where Will is warmly greeted by his old friends and co-workers, Ann and Gareth, who are now dating, and Kelly and Russell, who have recently had a baby. Will wholeheartedly congratulates both couples, particularly happy to be reunited with Russell. As the group discuss Clinton, to everyone's surprise, Will's the first to suggest Clinton should be impeached. None of his friends saw this coming. He used to be the most enthusiastic supporter among them. But Will's jaded now, a noticeable change. When April and Kelly bring out his cake and partygoers start singing happy birthday, Will is nowhere to be found. April's forced to search for him, finding him in front of her apartment, drinking. She gently admonishes him for missing the cake she took the time to bake. During the party she took the time to plan, realizing he's drunk. As she sits beside him, taking a swig from his bottle, Will can't help but notice how beautiful she is. Emboldened by the alcohol, he confesses he's always been in love with her, and in truth, he's just been running from the enormity of his feelings all these years. She wonders why he never told her. Will thinks she never would have been interested in someone like him, and April rolls her eyes at that. He kisses her, but she pushes him off, upset he didn't confess when he had himself together. Drunken William doesn't appreciate her criticism, retaliating with venomous and unwarranted criticism of her lifestyle and kind. April's sick of his ungratefulness, especially after she supported him through all his mess with no thanks. After a well-deserved slap, she kicks Will off her porch. Maya paces her room, agreeing with her father that the story really is complicated, as she tries to recap all the relationships and love triangles that have passed so far. Will continues, telling her how he stumbled across April's original copy of Jane Eyre in a used bookstore. It was fate, as she always said. He visits her place to give it to her, and April's roommate lets him in to wait. April's not home, because she recently began grad school at New York University. As Will looks around her apartment, eyes resting on her familiar collection of books, he notices a photo of her and a man. The man, Kevin, appears behind Will as if summoned. The two exchange pleasantries, and Will realizes he's the same Kevin she mentioned. Will suddenly feels wrong for being there, like he's intruding on the happy life April's built for herself. He decides to leave without giving April the book. While contemplating his feelings about April, he runs into Summer, who happily announces she's pregnant by a man who's no longer in the picture. Summer admits she never truly needed a man. Will was the closest she ever got to the one, but she's aware how she screwed it up now. She invites him to a party at her house on Sunday, begging him to come. Meyer interrupts the story again, complaining maybe it isn't a good idea for her to know after all, worried she won't like the woman her mother is. She's scared Summer's her mother, and Will isn't her real father, which would explain to her why her parents don't love each other anymore. William assures her that theory is incorrect, and this story has a happy ending. But Maya doesn't see the happiness in her parents getting divorced, regardless of who her mom is. Seeing his daughter emotional, Will suggests they stop, but Meyer insists he finish, so he decides to break for tea instead. By the time Will returns with the tea, Maya's already fallen asleep, and he tucks her in, kissing her goodnight. Maya wakes with renewed vigor the next morning, claiming she's cracked the mystery about who her mom is. As they pick up breakfast, Meyer insists he finish the tale so she can be proven right. Resuming the story, Will arrives at Summer's house for the party. The two briefly chat about Hampton's passing last year due to a heart attack. Will offers his condolences, along with a bouquet of flowers. The two have a moment as Summer compliments how beautiful Will is. He begs her not to get his hopes up and charm him, as they both know how badly that would end. He and Summer agree to be just friends. Summer surprises him by leading him to Emily. The two are shocked to see each other. Emily's moved to New York to work with the city's educational department, mentioning she called him. Will recalls making the excuse he meant to call her back, but lost her number. He takes it that moment, saving it in his cell phone to prove that he means it. Will and Emily reflect while they walk on why they broke up in the first place. Will reminds her she slept with Charlie. Emily admits she was scared of Will and his big dreams back then, and ever since breaking up with him, she's felt lost. Will confides he's felt the same about his relationships through the years. Emily strokes a finger through his hair, suggesting maybe they just needed a different plan, and Maya stops the story, noticing something. Meyer explains that this detail is how she figured out who her mom is in the story. Every time she would cry, her mother would fluff up her hair and tell her to be brilliant. Will grins, asking her if she's sure the woman walking towards them is her mother, and Maya confirms with confidence, running up to her mother with a big hug. Maya grabs her parents' hands, walking with them to the zoo, where they admire the penguins. Meyer educates her parents on how penguins mate for life, and how mated penguins can always find each other again after being separated for years, secretly hoping her parents can reunite like the penguins can. While looking at her parents talking though, she realizes it won't happen, and how sad Will is about the divorce. Sarah, Emily, takes Maya's hand as they leave, but she pauses, running back to Will to thank him for telling her the story. He realizes he almost forgot to tell Maya the happy ending, revealing that it's her. She tears up, hugging her father tightly as he wipes away her tears, and then goes home with Sarah. Will signs the divorce papers with a sense of finality. While unpacking his stuff, he finds April's copy of Jane Eyre. He finds her at her new job, a pleasant surprise for her, and the two chat like no time's passed at all. April stopped smoking, now resides in Brooklyn and is single at the moment, confessing things were never right with Kevin. Will gifts her with the book and April's speechless, starting to cry as she realizes what it is. She wonders how and where he found it, and Will feels terrible to admit he's had it for years. He wanted to give it to her for so long, but just couldn't. He apologizes, but April asks him to leave, unsure with how to deal with her mixed emotions. Meyer admonishes him for having kept the book all that time, and just leaving April there with no further explanation. Maya notices Will changed all the names in the story except April's. Her mother became Emily, Natasha became Summer, but April remained her true self. Will wonders why Maya's so concerned, and she admits it's because she wants him to be happy. It's clearly visible that he's miserable, despite how he tries to hide it. Getting an idea, Will tells her to put her coat on. The two grab a taxi and head over to April's place. Maya tries to give Will an encouraging speech on the ride over. They buzz April, who answers without thinking. She tries to ignore him, but hearing Maya's voice makes April curious. Will asks to be let in, but April hesitates, feeling like bringing his daughter is cheating. He decides they'll count to 30, and if she doesn't come down by then, they'll go home and never discuss this again. Maya agrees. They count, very slowly, but despite their stalling, they get to 30 and April isn't there. As Will leads her away, Maya's disappointed, but just as she gives up hope, April comes outside. Will confesses he kept the book because it was the only thing he had left of her, and April knows without him saying it, he loves her still. April hugs him tightly, peeking past him to say hello to Maya. She invites them up so they can tell her the rest of the story.